Evan was 17 when his mother caught him texting another boy, a single message that shattered his world in seconds. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow," he'd written, his heart racing with the thrill of first love. But that night his mother stood in his doorway, phone in hand, her face twisted with fury and disbelief. She didn't ask questions. She didn't listen. "You're disgusting," she spat, her voice trembling with something between rage and shame. "Get out, now!" Evan stumbled over his words, pleading, but her screams drowned him out. His backpack barely held a change of clothes as she shoved him toward the door, her eyes refusing to meet his. The rain outside soaked him instantly, a cold slap to match the rejection burning in his chest. Upstairs, Liam watched it all unfold. 2 years older than Evan, he stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, lips sealed. He didn't flinch as their mother slammed the door behind Evan, didn't move as the lock clicked shut. Liam had always envied Evan, the golden child who got their mother's smiles, her praise, her gentle hands ruffling his hair. Evan was the smart one, the sensitive one, the kid who could do no wrong, until that night. Now Liam saw his chance. By morning he'd claimed Evan's room, sprawling across the bed that still smelled like his brother, flipping through Evan's old sketchbooks like they were his own. Their mother didn't stop him. She just nodded, her silence louder than any approval. Out in the storm, Evan clutched his bag, the weight of it nothing compared to the ache inside. He'd always known Liam resented him, felt it in the sharp jabs, the quiet glares across the dinner table. But this was different. Liam hadn't just stood by, he'd stepped into Evan's life. Evan didn't cry that night, he couldn't. The tears wouldn't come, not yet. Instead he walked, feet sinking into the wet earth, the sound of thunder rumbling overhead. He had nowhere to go, no one to call. His phone buzzed once in his pocket, a final text from his boyfriend. "Where are you?" Before he could reply, the screen went black, battery dead, cutting him off from the only person who might have understood. Alone, he wandered through the streets, the rain plastering his dark hair to his forehead, his sneakers squelching with every step. He didn't know it then, but that night wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a story he'd never imagined, a story of loss so deep it hollowed him out, and a strength he didn't know he had. Liam slept soundly that night, the room he'd stolen still warm with Evan's presence. He didn't hear the storm. He didn't feel the guilt. Not yet. Downstairs, their mother sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall, her hands clasped tight. She'd raised her boys to be good, to follow rules, to fit in. Evan's truth didn't fit, and she couldn't bear it. She told herself she'd done the right thing, that tough love would fix him. But as the house grew quiet, a small part of her wondered if she'd just broken something she couldn't mend. Evan found shelter under a bus stop awning, the metal bench cold against his soaked jeans. He shivered, teeth chattering, replaying his mother's words, Liam's silence. He'd spent his whole life trying to please them, shrinking himself to fit their expectations. Now cast out for being who he was, he felt a strange flicker inside, a tiny ember of defiance. They thought they'd crushed him. They were wrong. Wet, freezing, and abandoned, Evan made a promise to himself. He'd survive this. He'd build a life they couldn't touch, and one day they'd see what they'd thrown away. That night carved Evan into someone new, someone who'd learned to stand taller than the shadows of rejection. But for now, he was just a boy under a leaking roof, rain dripping through the cracks, his breath fogging in the chilly air. Little did he know, years later, the brother who'd taken everything would need him more than anyone else. If Evan's story hits you where it hurts, stick around. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Heart Stories for more real tales of grit and grace. Hit that bell so you don't miss what's next. Liam woke up the morning after Evan left with a strange sense of victory curling in his chest. The house felt lighter without his little brother's shadow, or so he told himself. He stretched out on Evan's old bed, the mattress still creased from years of someone else's sleep, and let the quiet sink in. Downstairs, their mother brewed coffee, her movements sharp and mechanical, like she could scrub away the memory of the night before. She didn't mention Evan, didn't ask where he'd gone. Liam didn't either. Instead, he rummaged through Evan's closet, pulling out a faded blue jacket that used to turn heads at school. It fit him just fine. He wore it out that day, strutting past Evan's old friends with a grin that said he'd won something. Soon Liam slipped into Evan's life like it had always been his. He started hanging out with Evan's best friend Jake, the one who used to spend hours sketching comics with Evan in their basement. Jake didn't ask about Evan, didn't push back when Liam showed up instead. They grabbed burgers, laughed over dumb jokes, and shot hoops in the driveway, the sound of the ball thumping against concrete filling the space Evan used to occupy. Liam even took Evan's spot at the family dinner table, the one closest to their mother where she'd always set an extra roll for her favorite. She didn't talk about it, but her eyes softened when Liam cracked a joke or helped with the dishes. He'd spent years simmering in jealousy, watching Evan soak up her affection. Now, with Evan gone, that warmth was his, and he basked in it. Meanwhile, Evan was clawing his way through a world that didn't want him. The first few nights, he slept in a rusted car he'd found abandoned near a gas station, the seats stained and reeking of mildew. He'd curl up tight, breath fogging in the chill, waking to the ache of hunger gnawing at his stomach. By day, he wandered, picking up odd jobs where he could, sweeping floors at a diner, hauling trash for $1 or $2. The money barely covered a burger and a coffee, but it kept him alive. He learned fast how to dodge questions, how to keep his head down, how to swallow the shame of being the kid nobody wanted. At night, he'd sit under a flickering street lamp, scribbling in a cheap notebook he'd swiped from a thrift store. Words spilled out, raw and jagged, about the mother who'd turned away, the brother who'd stepped over him. Liam didn't think about Evan much. Why would he? Life was good. He graduated high school with decent grades, got a job at the local hardware store, flirted with girls who didn't know the family secrets. He'd catch Jake's eye sometimes, a flicker of something unspoken passing between them, but Jake never brought up Evan, and Liam didn't either. The years blurred by, and Liam built a life on the ruins of his brothers. He'd laugh louder, stand taller, tell himself he'd earned it. Their mother framed a photo of him in his work apron, hung it where Evan's drawings used to be. She'd smile at it sometimes, a tight, tired smile, and Liam would feel a rush of pride. He was enough now. Evan, though, wow, wasn't done. One evening, exhausted and shivering after a long shift, he stumbled into a community center, drawn by a sign promising free coffee. Inside, a group sat in a circle, talking about pain, about loss, about finding a way through. Evan lingered in the back, hands stuffed in his pockets, listening as a woman spoke about turning her scars into strength. Something clicked. He stayed until the end, then approached the organizer, voice shaky but firm. "Can I join in?" he asked. She looked at him, saw the hollows under his eyes, the determination in his jaw, and nodded. That night, Evan found a spark, a lifeline. He didn't know it yet, but those meetings would lead him somewhere Liam could never follow. Liam kept living, oblivious, his days filled with small triumphs and smaller regrets. He'd sit on the porch some nights, staring at the stars, a vague unease tugging at him. He'd push it down, crack open a beer, tell himself he'd done nothing wrong. Evan was gone. That was that. But across town, Evan was scratching out a new beginning, one shaky step at a time, fueled by a fire Liam couldn't see. Their paths had split, one paved with theft, the other with grit, and neither of them knew how close those paths would come to crashing back together. Evan stood in the community center that first night, coffee cup trembling in his hands, surrounded by strangers who somehow felt less foreign than his own family ever had. He listened as they shared stories of broken homes, lost dreams, battles fought in silence. Their voices wove a thread of recognition through him, stitching up a wound he hadn't known was still bleeding. Week after week, he returned, sitting closer each time until one evening he spoke. His words came haltingly, about a mother who'd chosen fear over love, a brother who'd turned his back. The room held its breath, then exhaled with nods and murmurs of understanding. For the first time since that rainy night, Evan felt seen. Those meetings became his anchor. He enrolled in night classes, scraping together every dime from odd jobs to pay for textbooks thicker than his arm. He studied under dim streetlights, in diner booths during slow shifts, anywhere he could carve out a moment. Psychology drew him in, not just as a subject, but as a map to unravel the chaos of his own heart. He learned about trauma, how it burrows deep, how it shapes a person without their consent. He saw himself in those pages, a kid discarded, but also something more, a survivor piecing himself back together. Years passed, marked by late nights and quiet triumphs, until Evan stood in a cap and gown, diploma in hand, a testament to a will his family never believed in. Now 22, Evan took a job at a recovery center across town, a place where people came to mend what life had torn apart. He sat with teenagers reeling from rejection, veterans haunted by war, parents grieving lost children. His office was small, cluttered with secondhand furniture, but it was his. Clients called him steady, the guy who listened without judgment, who knew pain wasn't just a word. He'd lean forward, elbows on his knees, asking questions that cut through the noise, guiding them toward a light he'd once struggled to find. Every session, he poured himself into their healing, as if each breakthrough stitched another part of his own soul. Evan kept his past locked away, a box he rarely opened. Colleagues would ask about his family over lunch, their voices casual, unaware of the weight behind the question. He'd shrug, offer a half smile, say he was on his own. It wasn't a lie, not really. He'd built a life from scratch, a fragile but fierce thing, held together by determination in the echoes of those community center nights. Sometimes, late at work, he'd pull out that old notebook, now worn and dog-eared, and read the jagged lines he'd written years ago. They weren't just memories. They were fuel, a reminder of why he kept going, why he refused to let the world break him twice. Across town, Liam's life rolled on, steady but unremarkable. He still worked at the hardware store, still lived in their mother's house, still wore Evan's old jacket when the weather turned cold. He'd settled into a rhythm, one that didn't ask much of him, didn't stir the unease that sometimes crept up at night. He'd stopped thinking about Evan, or so he thought. The guilt was there, buried under layers of routine, a dull ache he'd learned to ignore. He dated a little, drank with Jake on weekends, told himself he was content. Their mother grew quieter with age, her hands slower, her eyes drifting to that photo of Liam on the wall. She never spoke Evan's name, and Liam followed her lead, letting the silence widen. Evan didn't know it, but his world was about to shift again. One afternoon, his supervisor called him into her office, her voice clipped with urgency. A new case had come in, a tough one, a man with PTSD so severe he'd shut out everyone around him. The hospital needed someone skilled, someone patient. Evan nodded, flipping through the file she handed him, his fingers steady despite the long day. He didn't glance at the name. Not yet. He just agreed to take it on, unaware that fate was pulling him back to the brother who'd claimed his life all those years ago. Liam was waiting, broken in ways Evan couldn't yet imagine, and their story was far from over. Evan had climbed out of nothing, built a purpose from the wreckage. He thought he'd left his family behind, but the past has a way of catching up, even when you've stopped looking back. Evan stepped into the hospital room with the calm he'd honed over years of facing others' pain, his clipboard tucked under his arm, ready for another case. The man on the bed looked like a stranger at first, gaunt and unshaven, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Evan froze mid-step, the air catching in his throat. It was Liam, his brother, the one who'd stood by while their mother cast him out, who'd taken his room, his friends, his place in the world. Liam didn't look up, didn't recognize him, just stared at the wall, hands clenched around the thin blanket. Evan swallowed hard, years of buried hurt clawing their way up, but he steadied himself. He was here to do a job, nothing more. Liam had been in a car wreck months ago, a brutal crash that left his body scarred and his mind fractured. The doctors said he'd survived by luck, but the real damage wasn't in his bones. Nightmares kept him awake, flashes of metal twisting, glass shattering, a scream he couldn't place. He'd shut down, pushing away friends, their mother, anyone who tried to reach him. The hospital called it PTSD, said he needed someone to break through the wall he'd built. Evan read the file now, piecing it together, his fingers tightening on the paper. Liam, the brother who'd once thrived on his absence, was a shell trapped in a prison of his own head. Evan didn't reveal who he was. He couldn't. Not yet. He started the sessions, sitting across from Liam in a sterile room, his voice even, asking simple questions. Liam barely responded. His answers clipped, his gaze darting to the door like he wanted to bolt. Evan saw the signs, the way trauma locked a person inside themselves. He'd seen it in clients before, felt it in his own chest years ago. He kept pushing, gentle but firm, drawing Liam out with questions about the crash, the fear, the things he couldn't say. Liam snapped once, voice raw, telling Evan to leave him alone, that no one could fix this. Evan stayed, unflinching, knowing the anger wasn't really for him. Weeks passed and Evan ran group sessions, bringing Liam into a circle of others wrestling with their own ghosts. Liam resisted, slumping in his chair, arms crossed, but Evan kept at it. He shared stories from his work about people who'd found their way back, never mentioning his own past. Something in Liam started to crack. One day he spoke, voice low, about the sound of the crash replaying in his sleep, how it wouldn't stop. The group listened and Evan nodded, letting the silence settle. It was progress, small but real, a thread of trust forming between them, fragile as spun glass. Then came the moment everything shifted. During a group session, Evan asked Liam to name one thing he regretted, something that weighed on him beyond the accident. Liam stared at the floor, fists tight, the room so quiet you could hear the clock ticking. Finally, he looked up, straight at Evan, and his brow furrowed. "You remind me of someone," he muttered, voice rough, uncertain. Evan held his gaze, heart pounding, but kept his face steady. "Who?" he asked, soft but direct. Liam blinked, confusion flickering, then shook his head. "I don't know, just someone." Evan let it drop, but the air thickened, a spark of recognition hovering, unspoken. The next session, Liam arrived early, sitting alone when Evan walked in. He looked different, less guarded. His shoulders slumped, not from defeat, but from something heavier. Evan sat down, ready to start, when Liam spoke first. "I know you," he said, voice trembling, eyes searching Evan's face. "You're him. You're Evan." The words hung there, sharp and heavy, cutting through years of distance. Evan didn't deny it, didn't flinch. He just nodded, slow and deliberate. "Yeah, Liam, it's me." Liam's face crumpled, not with anger, but with something rawer, a flood of memory and shame crashing over him. Evan watched his brother unravel, the man who'd once taken everything now sitting broken before him. Liam didn't speak again that day, just sat there, head in his hands, breathing uneven. Evan stayed quiet too, letting the truth settle between them. He'd come to help a patient, not confront his past. But here it was, staring him in the face. Liam's walls were down, and Evan knew the next move would change them both. Their story, tangled in betrayal and silence, had found them again, and there was no running from it now. Liam sat across from Evan in that quiet hospital room, the truth of their shared past filling the space like a storm ready to break. His hands shook as he looked at his brother, the one he'd betrayed all those years ago, now sitting there, steady and whole. Evan waited, his face calm but his chest tight, knowing this moment could unravel everything he'd built. The group session started soon after, others filing in, unaware of the history pulsing between the two men. Liam barely moved, his eyes locked on Evan, searching for something, maybe forgiveness, maybe judgment. Evan didn't offer either, not yet. He just began the session, voice even, guiding the circle through their stories. Then Liam broke. Halfway through, he stood unsteady, his chair scraping the floor. The room went still, every eye on him as he faced Evan, tears welling up, spilling over before he could stop them. "I'm sorry," he choked out, voice raw, cracking under the weight of it. "I took your life, Evan. I took everything, and I didn't care. I was jealous, I was weak, and I let her throw you out. I'm so damn sorry." His words stumbled, messy and real, pouring from a place he'd kept locked for years. The group watched, stunned, some wiping their own eyes, but Evan just sat there, letting Liam's confession land. Evan felt the old hurt flare, sharp and familiar, but it didn't consume him. He'd carried it too long, turned it into something else. Strength, purpose. He stood, slow and deliberate, and stepped toward Liam. His brother flinched, like he expected a blow, but Evan rested a hand on his shoulder, firm yet gentle. "I didn't come here to hate you," Evan said, his voice low, steady. "I came to help you. You're still my brother, Liam, even after all of it." Liam sobbed then, a sound that broke the air. and Evan pulled him close, holding him as he hadn't since they were kids. The room blurred around them, a circle of strangers bearing witness to a wound mending. Liam cried for a long time, clinging to Evan, years of guilt and fear spilling out. Evan held him, feeling the weight of their shared past shift, not gone, but lighter somehow. He'd spent so long proving he could survive without them, without Liam, without their mother. Now here he was, saving the one who'd hurt him most. When Liam finally pulled back, his face red and streaked, he looked at Evan with something new. Respect. Maybe even awe. "You're stronger than I'll ever be," he whispered. Evan didn't argue. He just nodded, a quiet acceptance settling between them. Their mother never came to the hospital, never knew Evan was there, but that was a story for another day. Liam left that session different, still fragile, but with a crack of light in his darkness. Evan watched him go, knowing this wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was messy, imperfect, real. He'd chosen mercy, not because Liam deserved it, but because he'd earned the right to let go. The past would always be there, etched into them both, but it didn't own him anymore. Evan walked out of that room a little taller, a man who'd turned rejection into redemption, not just for himself, but for the brother who'd once cast him aside. What would you do if the person who hurt you most needed your help? Share your thoughts below because your story matters. If Evan and Liam's journey moved you, please hit that like button, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Heart Stories. We're here to tell these real, raw tales, and we can't do it without you. Tap that bell, join us. Don't miss what's next.